Graham Halton joined the Royal Australian Navy in 1959. In 1965, he was part of the Naval escorts taking the troopship Sydney to Vietnam. Over the past 20 years, Graham has led the Tasmanian branch of the TPI as president, a role he has greatly cherished as a veteran. We thank Graham very much for this contribution, as well as his role in obtaining the DVA grant who have supported this interview series.
Well, I was born in, obviously in Hobart, but my parents come from Cygnet, and we lived at Cygnet up till I was about 5, and then we moved to a housing department here at Goodwood, and that's where I started my adventure. I left school at 15, mainly because Dad was out of work, and I thought Mum and Dad were sort of paying for the three of my brother and sister to go to Catholic schools. We had a situation off Vietnam where we did a gunnery shoot off the coast, and I just happened to leave my action station. I was told to sort of, we could stand down from my action station. And A and B turret, they were part of our section, which was called Red Section, and the after turret was Blue Section. Anyway, they said that Red System can stand down, but Blue System can still stand too. And I didn't realise that that pipe had been made, and I decided I'd go down to the quarterdeck for a smoke. And as I walked under X-turret, I fired both barrels, and probably about, well, from here to the roof above my head, and I've suffered with tinnitus after that and hearing loss, and that led me to look at DVA support. On the Monday evening, most of the sailors, as we did, were down in the local wet canteen, and the wet canteen used to close at 9 o'clock, and you had to clear the wet canteen by about 9:15 or thereabouts. And the word come through at about 5 to 9 that Voyager and Melbourne had collided, and so everyone just left and went back to our accommodation spaces and sat in front of the TV till probably midnight, listening to and watching the situation unfold off the New South Wales coast. 4 or 5 chaps that had posted from Cerberus with me onto Voyager. One of the guys that I knew, he didn't make it off. 2 of the mates that I knew did make it. One guy who's since left us, he got the BEM for helping guys out of the forward section.
On a moonless February night, some 6 decades ago, 2 Australian naval ships, the HMAS Voyager and the HMAS Melbourne, collided while on exercises off the south coast of New South Wales. The Voyager was cut in two and sunk. 82 men perished that night.
We grouped around the hull and realised it was going down pretty quick, so I just turned around and struck off straight and swam as far away as I could get. So when I was stopped and turned around again, the bow was just disappearing in the sea. Poof, gone.
Oh, extraordinary.
When I saw that we were actually going to hit her, it moved. There's a doorway into the flying control position on the left-hand side of the compass platform. I moved myself into the doorway and braced against the door, and then there was the bump, and there were sparks on our flight deck. I don't remember seeing anything of the forward section after that.
You heard people say, over here, where am I? Or where is somebody else?
Looking back at those times, did you realise the sacrifice of family you know, in supporting you as a serving member, or was it just one of those things that was almost expected because that's the way life was?
Thinking about it today, and probably remembering back then, it was probably more, this is life. And it was the old saying, you know, if they wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you with one. And I think we sort of looked at it that way, because you were bulletproof, and you just accepted it. Not like today's Defence Force, you know, it's so different. Remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice. They shall not grow old as we that are left grow old. They shall not weary them nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning we will remember them. We will remember them. Lest we forget. Thanks, gents. When I first started, the transition was probably my age group didn't partake in very much at TPI. It was mainly the World War II guys, maybe a couple of Koreans, but mostly TPI. TPI World War II guys. And it wasn't until my age group got to their age group that we started to do what they were doing. One of our big functions that we have is Anzac Day. We've had the North Hobart Football Club came to us and said, is there any way that we can have an Anzac Day commemoration on the footy field with a full catapult party, a drummer, a bugler. We have a vocalist who sings both the national anthems of the two countries. It's a set game. It's set for North Hobart and Lauderdale. The other thing that I'd like to see in Hobart, because I think Hobart's too small to have so many ESOs, ex-service organisations, that we all should be under one roof. And we provide everything from under one roof. But there's people out there who are against that. So, you know, and I brought that up with the RSL back in 2005, 2006. And it was like trying to bump your bum on the moon.
So over that time, Graham, they're pretty lean times for your family. Obviously, what made you consider a career in the Royal Australian Navy?
Well, that's an interesting question. I happened to be working at Myers, and we were doing some work in the My department store. And, there was myself and another apprentice there this day, and he said, let's go and join the Navy. Oh, yeah, okay. So we went down at lunchtime and got all the papers, and we went home, and I said to Mum and Dad that night, sign these papers for me, I'm joining the Navy. And they said, no way in the world. And I had just turned 17. We had a little bit of a disagreement about signing the papers, but I finally won, and I took them back in the next day. And the other apprentice, he didn't bring his papers back. So alone, I went down to the recruiting office and handed my papers in, and 20 days later, I'm in the Navy, and by myself. And that's how I joined up.
So did you have any family history of military service? Did your father serve, grandparents serve?
No, I had uncles who were in the Second World War. I had a great uncle that was in the First World War, all in the Army, and that was the only part of the family that was in the Defence Force.
So considering your I guess your fast decision making, did you actually know anything about the Navy?
No, I didn't. The only thing I knew about the Navy when I was going to school in my early years, grade 5 or thereabouts, we used to do concerts, school concerts, and the teacher decided that she'd have sailors doing the sailor's hornpipe. And as a 5-year-old, I was doing the sailor's hornpipe on the stage at the town hall at a school concert, and that was the only part of the Navy that I knew.
Well, Graham, we over the years we've heard a lot of reasons why people join up. Never has I've ever heard about the sailor's hornpipe being a key motivator to join the Royal Australian Navy, but each to their own. And so what year did you go in to?
October 59. I was 17 and 20 days. I joined on the 26th of October 1959.
Tell us about where you went. Where was the recruit training then, and tell us about what it was like back then.
Well, my recruit training was obviously at HMAS Cerberus. Back then it was known as Flinders Naval Depot, FND. I did my initial training starting in October and was posted in March of 1960 to Western Australia, to HMAS Diamantina, where I spent 2 years and about 3 months, I think it was, in Diamantina, which was pretty different to what I'd ever been used to. Rough seas on the west coast of Rockness Island and up and down the west coast, with trips to Singapore and Jakarta and Surabaya. HMAS Diamantina was a ship which served in the Second World War, and I'm not quite sure of the island where she took signatures on board the quarterdeck for the surrender of the Japanese in the Second World War.
So quite historical.
Very much so.
And what class of ship was she?
She was a River class frigate. I'm not quite sure now how many ships were built during the Second World War of that class of ship.
So for a young boy from Goodwood in Tasmania to suddenly being involved with all these trips in a world that I guess was fighting the Cold War, what was that like for you personally? Well,
it was interesting that I only read it not so long ago, where we were sailing from Fremantle to go around Java and to end up in Singapore. And I read it that the captain was called to Sydney to have the orders of procedure in sailing around Java with the Indonesians. And we sailed up to Darwin, and we left Darwin and headed towards Sunder Strait. And when we entered Sunder Strait, we had to lay out our largest white ensign that we carried on board, and at night we had to have it floodlit, which was obviously to show the Indonesians, if they were sort of looking out, who we were. And my position as a 17-year-old at the time was in the after steering position. And Diamantina never had any accommodation aft, which was all stores and office space and all that. And we're sailing through the Sunder Strait. I'm in the after steering position by myself as a 17-year-old, and I'm a little bit concerned that, what's going on here? And you tend to sort of start worrying about, if something happens, how do I get out of here and all that sort of thing, but nothing did happen. But
would it be correct to say, Graham, that in that time frame that we're looking around the Malayo-Borneo issues as well as the rising tensions around the Konfrontasi in that time with Indonesia as well?
I'm not quite sure now what the conditions were up there, but I know that there was explosions and bomb explosions in Singapore itself, and we were told that be aware of where you are and the situations that may occur.
Of course, because at that time, I guess Singapore wasn't independent. It was still part of Malaysia.
That's right. That's right.
Yes. So, from that time on Diamantina, where to next?
I was posted from Diamantina back to Cerberus, HMAS Cerberus, to do a secondary course in gunnery control. When I finished that course, I remained at Cerberus till the loss of Voyager.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's on the Monday evening. Most of the sailors, as we did, were down in the local wet canteen, and the wet canteen used to close at 9 o'clock, and you had to clear the wet canteen by about 9:15 or thereabouts. And the word come through at about 5 to 9 that Voyager and Melbourne had collided, and so everyone just left and went back to our accommodation spaces and sat in front of the TV till probably midnight, listening to and watching the situation unfold off the New South Wales coast. Most of us were obviously dumbfounded, and it was a real shock to sort of hear it and watch it.
Did you know anyone on the Voyager?
Yes, I did. I knew there was 4 or 5 chaps that had posted from Cerberus with me onto Voyager, and the ones that one of the guys that I knew, he didn't make it off. Two of the mates that I knew did make it. One guy who's since left us, he got the BEM for helping guys out of the forward section as it was going down. So yeah, it was interesting that 2 of those guys were posted to Duchess, or HMAS Duchess, who was purchased from the Royal Navy to replace Voyager.
That actually there's something always in my mind about how did we end up with a ship called Duchess, and that was the obviously the answer. So post that time, you've finished your secondary course. Where to next?
Actually, Duchess. And it was interesting that the Americans offered us a ship, which was probably... Sorry, I'll just go back a step. The Duchess was commissioned in about 1954, and the Americans, they offered us a ship that was built for the Second World War, but the admirals in Canberra, they decided on Duchess mainly because she was a AC powered ship, not a DC powered ship, and that was one of the main reasons that we took Duchess. And mainly also Duchess was a gunnery ship, similar to our 2 Darings and similar to Voyager.
How long did you spend on Duchess?
I joined Duchess. I still remember the day where I joined Duchess. It was the 8th of May 1964. It was a Friday and it was raining, and I was duty weekend. We started off cleaning the ship and getting rid of all the rubbish and get the ship up to Australian standard, which took us probably about 8-9 months. I was a fire controlman, which how can I put this? We were a fire controlman, looked after the fire control of the firepower of the ship, and we had a little space well down inside the ship. It was called the transmitting station, and my action station was down there in that space. Where did we travel? We sailed to Sydney on about the first week in December of '64, and then we were sent up to the Far East in the 19th of January of '65. There must have been something in that particular trip, because and Vietnam must have come into this equation, because we weren't up there very long, and we were up there 7th of February. We arrived in Singapore. We were only there till the end of March, and we came home. And when we arrived back in Australia, as we sailed down the east coast, we started putting the natives of each state ashore for leave. And we didn't even go into Brisbane to let the Queensland natives off. They were taken ashore by boat. We got down to Sydney. We went alongside Sydney. The New South Welshmen, they all were put ashore for leave. We got down to Victoria, and we had a 6 weeks refit period, and then straight back to Sydney. And we arrived back in Sydney on a Sunday. I'm not quite sure of the date now, but we arrived back in Sydney on a Sunday. On Monday, we just turned to as normal and did our work, and then on Tuesday morning, the captain called each part of ship down to the petty officers' mess and told each group that we were going to Vietnam on Wednesday. And we were to sail at 8 o'clock Wednesday morning. On that particular night, no one was allowed ashore. We went into Operation Awkward, which means that we have people on the upper deck walking around armed and checking for divers and other people in Sydney Harbour, but we did. And we sailed at 8 o'clock the next morning and went out off the coast over the horizon and just waited for HMAS Sydney to come out with the 1st Battalion. We joined up with Sydney and away we went. And it was quite interesting, actually. There was a guy on North Head flashing the ship with a flash, and he was asking who we were. And the captain sent back a message and tell him we're Anzac, tell him we're HMAS Anzac. And apparently it was in the Telegraph next day that HMAS Anzac was on its way to Vietnam with HMAS Sydney, but it wasn't quite right.
That would have been interesting coming off North Head, which at that time was owned by the Army,
yeah.
Whereas South Head is
that's
still
right.
owned.
So it might have been an Army guy that was...
You mentioned you were joined up by with HMAS Sydney. Tell us what Sydney was in that time frame, because that was Sydney 3.
Yeah, that's right. The Sydney the aircraft carrier, she was converted to a troop carrier, troop transport. She'd already done some trips to Borneo with the confrontation, but this was the first time, her first trip to Vietnam with the 1st Battalion. I happened to know, well, I didn't know then, but I happened to know one of the guys in the 1st Battalion who was not long been in the Army. You'd probably know, I've lost his name now, Bill Heinsohn. Yeah, so I found out later on that Bill was on that particular trip, and we sailed ahead of Sydney during the day, and of a night we'd fall astern and sail astern of Sydney. And our captain, because we were in company with another ship, we had no beer issues. And of course, when we dropped in astern of Sydney of a night, all the cans from Sydney were that the boys were throwing overboard were floating past, and we were a dry ship and the Sydney was a wet ship. But that changed when we got off of Manus Island.
So the captain then decided on a beer issue?
Well, not really. He was told to. On the Sunday off of Manus, the Padres come over for Sunday service, and we had service on the quarterdeck, and the RCs went to the forecastle, and of course the RC's service was much quicker than the CVs, because the captain looked after the CVs, and the Padre that come over from Sydney was an RC Padre, so he took the RCs on the forecastle, and we finished much quicker than the guys on the quarterdeck. Anyway, the Padre's walking through the mess decks of the ship, and everyone's sitting around with, you know, long faces and etc. And he said, "What's the problem? We don't have a beer issue." Oh, so anyway, after we transferred the Padre back to Sydney, a signal come through from the captain of Sydney, "Give the boys a beer issue," and the captain of Sydney was a guy named Buster Crabbe. And he used to fly his pennant when we used to go alongside with a big crab on his pennant. Yeah, so that's how we got our beer issue.
Okay, so obviously the commanding officer of the Sydney was a full captain.
Full captain.
And
yes.
And the commanding officer of the
Duchess was a commander.
Was a commander.
Yeah. So he was senior.
Yeah. Oh well, so double the amount of cans in
yes, exactly.
floating past.
Yes.
Tell us about where you went into Vietnam and what the role was once you got into the territorial waters.
Yeah. Okay. We not long after we left Manus, we virtually had the fleet come back and meet us, which consisted of HMAS Melbourne, Vampire, and Supply, and Parramatta. And we sailed in formation around Sydney. Just before that, I forgot to mention, I went to my action station one night at midnight to do the middle watch, and I went down to the TS where my action station was, and I looked up at the speedometer, if you like to call it that, and we're doing 32 knots. And I thought, what's going on here? So I did a bit of checking with the boys up in the ops room, and we'd made a contact. And so we went out to look for this contact, and we believe it was a Russian submarine and not an Indonesian, which we thought would have been around, but we believe it was a Russian submarine. But that was as far as it went. And then we continued on, and then we met up with the fleet. When we got to just off the Cape St. Jacques, the Melbourne, Supply and Vampire left us, and Parramatta stayed with us. Parramatta went in first, followed by Sydney, and we went in last. And we were closest to what they call VC Hill, which was interesting because we couldn't bring our guns to bear anyway. We were too close if anything was fired at us. My position then was to go to the bridge armed with a Bren gun. And my place was on the bridge with a Bren gun during my watch. We were in 3 watches, which was a watch on and 2 watches off. And they wasn't quite sure how to get the first battalion off the ship, mainly because all that Sydney had at the time was a 5-ton crane. That's all she had. And to disembark all the army gear was, so it took us probably about, well, I'm not quite sure now, 3 or 4 days to get everything off. But the Yanks came in with their large helicopters and they started lifting everything off at the helicopters. We sailed out of there without any incident. We obviously in Operation Awkward again, with guys walking on the upper deck with armed, and boats going around the ship looking for any sort of diver that might be trying to sort of do something to us.
So after 3 days, You
yeah,
left?
yeah.
And that was Vung Tau, was it?
Vung Tau, yeah.
Yeah. What was that? What was that like as a port, as a town?
Well, we were at anchor, so we were probably maybe mile and a half, maybe 2 miles off Vung Tau. We were the closest. Parramatta, she was further up the river.
So you never got the opportunity to go ashore at all?
No, no one was allowed ashore.
Full operations.
Yeah, we were in full operational mode. So
you put to sea again?
We left Vung Tau, Sydney, Parramatta and Duchess. We left there and we went to Singapore for R&R, I suppose, if you want to call it R&R. When we left Singapore back to Australia, we went up through Malacca Strait, and then down the west coast of Western Australia into Fremantle, which was very interesting because when we got to Fremantle, we had to de-ammunition ship, which was a bit unusual, but maybe they wanted ammunition for other vessels stored in WA.
You talk about de-ammunition. Would it be fair to say that when, in that era and possibly even today, when Royal Australian Navy ships go, even on exercises, they actually take on their full ammunition load?
Yes. When we arrived in Sydney, on our first voyage from Williamstown, we ammunitioned on that Sunday when we got to Sydney, and that was a full ammunition. It took us all day to, of course, Duchess, like our other Darings, had 3 turrets, so twin turrets, which meant we had a lot of ammunition on board.
Well, I guess you can't come back and get it if
no.
Even on exercise.
No.
So, was that voyage the only one you completed on Duchess to Vietnam?
Yes and no, actually, because I went back to Cerberus after Duchess to do another gunnery course, and when I completed that, I went down to the posting office and I said to the guys down there, I'm on posting to Anzac. And they said, yeah, but you're also on posting after Anzac. And I said, well, I haven't even got to Anzac yet. So I went to Anzac. I joined Anzac in January of '66, and we went to Sydney from Anzac. Anzac was refitting in Melbourne, Williamstown, and we sailed up to Sydney, and lo and behold, we were on another voyage to Vietnam, but we only went as far as Manus Island. And the interesting thing about being on Anzac is that my brother-in-law, he was the first called up of national servicemen, and he was in Sydney. So I told him to make sure that he gets up on the forecastle to be nice and fresh and nice breeze coming through the forecastle. And when I seen him after Vietnam, I said, how'd you go? He said, oh yeah mate, I got up in the forecastle all right. But he said, you forgot to tell me I'd be wet for the first 4 nights. But he enjoyed his voyage. Yeah.
Yeah. Was he infantry?
No, he was in transport.
Yeah, he wouldn't be used to being wet then.
No, that's right. That's right.
And so after Anzac,
back to Cerberus.
Yes.
As a posting, I'd done my 2 years at sea, and I went back to Cerberus, and my jobs at Cerberus started off being a watchkeeper at Cerberus, and I did my time as a watchkeeper, and then I went down to the registry office to be allocated a special job, or a job, And the guy said, what would you like to do? And I said, oh, the wash deck locker would be pretty good, wouldn't it? And he said, you're the wash deck lockerman, mate. So
A what?
a wash deck lockerman was a guy who looked after the cleaning materials of the accommodation blocks, and my job was to look after the accommodation officers, all the material in the accommodation blocks were on his PL, which is permanent list, bedding, bunks, lockers and all that, and it was my job to make sure that everything was all up to scratch with his permanent loan list.
Now done by contractors.
Now done by contractors, exactly.
Yes,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
And what was that like as a I guess in a way, you know, like a respite posting from sea duties?
Yeah, that's right.
What was that like?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I had my family over. We had a place in Frankston, which was my wife had a very good job. Found herself a very good job in Frankston, and we lived there for 2.5 years before we decided it was time to come home.
So you're there, you then have skipped an important point about family. So where did you meet? You know, that sort of thing, and what happened?
How did we meet? It was interesting. I'd known Jenny on and off over a period of time when I first left school, and I used to play underage football with Glenorchy, and she had a cousin who played underage football for North Hobart, or back in those days they were known as North West, and we sort of met on different occasions at the football, I suppose, and it sort of started from there. I come home on leave, and a friend of mine, he sort of probably got us together, I suppose, more firmly when I come home on a first or second leave. I can't remember now.
And when were you married, and where did you get married?
Yeah, we got married on the 16th of December in 1961, and we're still there. Yes.
So initially, did Jenny stay here, or did you?
Initially, Jenny stayed here. We had a crack at living in Melbourne in the early days, 62, 63 or thereabouts. While I was at Cerberus. But the pay back in those days wasn't really great, and when you sort of we had Sharon, our firstborn daughter. She was only obviously a little baby, and Jenny became pregnant while she was over in Melbourne, and we decided then that it was going to be pretty hard for us to. We never had a Navy house or anything. We had public rent, which was pretty high in Frankston. So we decided we'd Jennifer come back to Hobart, and it was interesting that our second born, young Graham, he was born 2 days after the loss of Voyager, which Jenny was in hospital in labour in that time, and she had a photograph of myself alongside her bed, and the staff were very reluctant to talk to her about me, mainly because of the loss of Voyager.
So that must have been hard for Jenny to be home here with 2 young children, and communications aren't what they are now with mobile phones, email, photographs, texts, that sort of thing.
Very much so.
So you're really looking at phone calls, which I guess would have been expensive, and letters. Yeah,
well, that's right. And also it's very interesting that when the first was born, Sharon, I had a cousin first cousin who lived in Carlton. Anyway, on a particular weekend that Sharon was born, or she was born on a Friday, and on the Friday night, I said to my cousin, I'll come up and spend the weekend with her and her partner in Carlton. So on the Saturday morning, I decided I'd take a walk down to the closest newsagent and see if I could buy the Mercury. So I bought the Mercury, and I'm just looking through the Mercury and come to the births and deaths. And I look at the births and here it is, Halton. Born on such and such a day, and that's how I found out that I was a dad.
It's I guess it's unimaginable now because we all read newspapers online, and
yeah, that's right.
People, once again, people ring and use mobiles like no tomorrow. But I guess back in those days, firstly, the fact you found a Mercury in Melbourne.
That's right.
The land of the Herald Sun, and secondly, it just happened to be the main method of notification back then.
Yes, it was. And I suppose, ran back to my cousin's unit in Carlton and look here in the Mercury. I'm a dad. Yeah.
And then went out and celebrated on Victorian beer, so I guess that would have been a bit hard.
I can't remember now. I think that we might have gone to the football actually, because she was a mad Footscray supporter, and I think we went to the St Kilda Oval to watch St Kilda and Footscray play that Saturday afternoon, which was okay, I suppose.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't South Melbourne, so
yeah.
And so, looking back at those times, did you realise the sacrifice of family, in supporting you as a serving member, or was it just one of those things that was almost expected because that's the way life was?
Thinking about it today, and probably remembering back then, it was probably more, this is life. And it was the old saying, if they wanted you to have a wife, they would have issued you with one. And I think we sort of looked at it that way, because you were bulletproof, and you just accepted it. Not like today's Defence Force, it's so different.
Very, very much so. Very much so. So, you had Jenny and the children here at home. What did your career look like after that point?
Nothing really changed. I just carried on with what I was doing. We wrote our letters very regularly. When it was 66, June of 66 is when we decided, that okay, let's get over to Melbourne. I knew I would have done 18 months before I'd go to sea again, and that's what we sort of wanted to get the family over to, because the two little ones were sort of old enough then to actually know where they were, and I think it was time then, our age was telling us it was time then to actually really get together, and I mean, I still had to keep duties, but they were sort of 1 in 5 or something like that, where today it's about 1 in 13 or 14 or something, and we really enjoyed it. Obviously, it was quite good to be over in Melbourne. We liked Frankston, and it was even at the stage, the job that Jenny had in Frankston, we were discussing even staying there and living there. But but at the end we said no, we'll come home to Tasmania.
When did you finally pull up stumps with Navy?
1996. When I got home, I thought, okay, I've done my time, and a mate of mine had just come back from over in Cerberus after doing a fortnight's reserve training, and he said, I got $500 for that. And I said, oh, where do I sign? And so I signed on in the reserves in about 1970 and kept going till 96.
You mentioned 1970, but did you ever go back to sea?
Yes, I did. I did time in only short periods of time in HMAS Bass, Ardent and Fremantle. Fremantle was probably the most enjoyable trips, I suppose, I did, mainly because of the role that I had in Fremantle. I was my first time in Fremantle, I was the buffer of the upper deck, and we sailed to Lord Howe Island, which I've sailed past many times in the permanent Navy, and we went to Lord Howe Island and we anchored off Lord Howe Island and I went ashore, and as soon as I stepped ashore it started to rain and it poured for about 2 hours, and I thought, so I got in some shelter and I thought, bugger this, I'm going back on board. Anyway, I went back on board and laid in my bunk, and which was about probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon, laid on my bunk and started to read a book and sort of dozed off to sleep. Anyway, I got woken at about 7:30. The sea had sort of came up with a fair bit of strong wind, and I got woken and said, the captain wants to see you on the bridge. And I went up onto the bridge and he said, we're going to go to sea because of the conditions. Anyway, I said to the captain, well, I'll go up on the forecastle, sir, and organise the anchor to be brought in. And anyway, we're bringing in the anchor, and as we were bringing in the anchor, she started to pitch in the sea. Anyway, we went into a wave, and when we lifted out of the wave, the winch wouldn't keep bringing the anchor cable in. Anyway, we did this a couple of times, and the next minute the anchor cable parted, broke. So I went down to the side of the bridge and yelled out to the bridge that the cable's parted. And they said, what'd you say? And I said, the bloody cable's parted. Oh, anyway, we took off out of there and brought in the rest of the cable that had parted. So here we are going across the Pacific Ocean without an anchor up the horsepipe, and we went into Twofold Bay. Sorry, not Twofold Bay. Into the bay just north of Sydney now. Can't think of the name of it now. But anyway, we went in there and we put our second anchor on before we went up through Sydney Heads. We couldn't go up past Admiralty House without an anchor up the horsepipe. And the second time in Fremantle was when she was in refit in Cairns, and I flew up to Cairns to join Fremantle. After we did the refit in Fremantle, we had to go and do an ORE, which is short for doing a workup to get the ship ready for sea. That was a pretty long period of time, a couple of days I think it was, continuous, doing the workup. We passed the workup okay, and so we sailed back to Sydney, and I was then flown back to Hobart.
And so after that, was that it for you?
Oh no, it was here in Hobart. I did many trips, fortnightly trips and weekend trips in Ardent, either as the coxswain or as the buffer on the upper deck.
So just explain to us HMAS Ardent, was what? Was he based here in Hobart, or?
HMAS Ardent was a boat, patrol boat. It was interesting that when she commissioned back in about 1968 or thereabouts, my boss in Cerberus, he brought Ardent into Cerberus, and she was based at Cerberus there for a while, and it wasn't till about late in the 70s, maybe mid 80s, before she was transferred to Hobart to replace HMAS Bass.
And so you're on board with your duties as a reservist then.
Yes.
By that stage.
Yes. Yeah.
You've gone into the reserves. What was that like after the intensity of full-time service and obviously the challenges of the time around Vietnam, etc., and the pressures of family? What was that like moving into, what did you do for civilian work? How did you balance that out with your reserve work? What was that like?
My civilian work was with BHP here in Tasmania, BHP Lifting Products. I was the state manager for BHP Lifting Products, which dealt a lot with wire ropes and cables and etc. With the reserve time, I had to juggle my time in the reserves along with my employment, which wasn't that hard because I used to sort of just go to sea weekends, and if I had my fortnightly trip away to keep my time up, I just do it during my annual leave. Do a fortnight during my annual leave until I started to sort of suffer with. I suffer with tinnitus very bad. We had a situation off Vietnam where we did a gunnery shoot off the coast, and I just happened to leave my action station. I was told to sort of we could stand down from my action station, and A and B turret. They were part of our section, which was called Red Section, and the after turret was Blue Section. Anyway, they said that Red System can stand down, but Blue System can still stand too, and I didn't realise that that pipe had been made, and I decided I'd go down to the quarterdeck for a smoke. And as I walked under X turret, I fired both barrels, and probably about from here to the roof above my head, and I've suffered with tinnitus after that and hearing loss, and that led me to look at DVA support.
I concur with that. I had a similar thing on Anzac in the Gulf.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were in a rib off the side of it. And when I did a fire mission. So when did that sort of become, your tinnitus become, and hearing loss really start to play on you? I mean, did you understand what it was?
No, I just had this sort of wind and whistling in my ears all the time. And I'd go to a audiologist, and my hearing was down, but I'd sort of nothing wrong with me, I'm all right, and all that. And it wasn't until I started sort of getting older. I mean, I was prepared to work till I was 70 because I loved my job, and I had everything supplied. I had a car, I had a phone. I didn't have to sort of worry about fuel for my car. I didn't have to worry about paying for my phone, etc. So I was quite happy doing what I was doing. But then it started to get to me a little bit. So I went to DVA and told them the situation, and the first thing they did was send me off to a audiologist. And, oh yeah, your hearing's down, and anyway, that was all right. And I went back to DVA and they said, oh, your hearing's down. We'll consider your situation. Anyway, nothing came of it. Anyway, I decided then that I'd make an application for a medical pension for my hearing, and they sent me back to another audiologist, and I was sort of being tested, and I said to the audiologist, I said, you know, in this controlled environment, everything's all right, but as soon as I go out on the street, that's when it hits me. I've got to sit with people that I can't sit in a group with people. I've got to sit, and it's like today. It's talking one-on-one. And anyway, they took me on board, and they gave me a 50% pension. And that's how it started off, and I was quite happy with that. Until I met I didn't actually meet, I knew a pensions officer in Launceston, and he said, come and talk to me about it. So I did, and it sort of went on from there.
So let's move from your service now to your path in the ex-service world. What as the president of the Tasmanian branch of the TPI Federation, well, firstly, tell us what TPI Federation is.
TPI Federation, it's total and permanently incapacitated ex-servicemen and women, and it deals with the veterans who are unable to work. They are able to work for 8 hours per week, but there's going to be no more TPIs as we know them. There's a new scheme coming on board, MERCA. Well, it's not new, but it's going to be new for us. And the contemporary veterans are not known as TPIs, even though they might have a TPI on their gold card. But the government at the time, and we sort of, as an organisation, really fought for the modern veteran that his compensation should be no less than what a TPI gets today, and they didn't know what to put on their gold card, so they embossed TPI on their gold card, even though they're not a TPI, but that's embossed on their gold card, and they're known as special rate veterans, and they're the guys that I really want to see looked after today. It's the younger veteran that really needs to know what goes on with the department. And I think deep down, I think the department do the best they can. I do. It's just that there's so many that they've not so many veterans, but there's so many claims that they've got to look after, and the government just won't give them the full resources to do that. But we are getting some younger veterans come on board now.
So, in relation to your role with TPI, how did you get involved in the actual TPI association, and where did it evolve from, the TPI Federation?
Well, it evolved from my tinnitus, but it got to the stage where it was starting to really get to me, and anxiety was starting to set in, depression, because all of a sudden I'm 50 years old, and you know, no one gets to 50. What I mean by no one gets to 50, 50 is very old, but it's not now. So that's how it all evolves, and I just made a claim for an increase in my pension, and I was on 90%, and I made a claim for an increase in my pension, and I I got knocked back for that because of the fact that I was still working, and I was still working full time. And they said you've got to make the decision to give up work. So I spoke to my advocate, and he said, by what I can see here, you should be okay to become a TPI. He said you may not, but you may. Anyway, so I bit the bullet, and with my doctor's support and my advocate support, we went through the period of time, and I gave up work, and probably within about a fortnight, they contacted me and said that we've approved your pension rate to TPI.
So you're going then, Graham, from a job where you had huge cost savings with car, fuel, phone, etc., to a TPI pension, and obviously a salary as a state manager. How did that even compare?
Well, I must admit that Jenny, my wife, she was a very good money manager, and we managed to, have a nice little, well, I wouldn't say a big nest egg, but a nice little nest egg there, while I had all those privileges from my employer. I mean, we lived at Sorrel, or down on Old Fawcett Road to be more precise, and with that we managed to put a couple of dollars away extra, and with that, and with the TPI pension and a service pension, and my wife also getting a service pension under DVA, we weren't too bad. We weren't too bad.
I'm asking you this question because from a personal side as well. You went from being a state manager. Did you have staff?
Yes, I did.
Yep.
I had 3, 5, 6, 7 of us.
So you had staff, you had this package and all that. How did you go from doing all that work to suddenly technically being retired but having nothing?
Okay.
As
well,
in a job role.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, what really happened is that I went to my local GP, and 6 or 7 weeks prior to actually finishing up, he put me on sick leave, and I was on sick leave for over a month before we decided that we would bite the bullet and stop work, and that's how it all started.
What was your transition like, though?
My transition, I suppose at the end of the day, my transition was fairly easy because I never had a great au fait with my Melbourne boss. We didn't hit it off real good, although we sort of, as far as work was concerned, no problem. Socially, he'd come to Hobart, and I would entertain him, I suppose. But I only did that because that was what I had to do, I suppose. But we sort of never saw eye to eye. Never saw eye to eye. And when I was on sick leave, he kept on sort of pestering him over what's going on and all that, and I wasn't prepared to sort of say, other than the doctor has written a medical certificate, and that's all I'm prepared to say.
So you've had an involvement with the TPI Association for many, many years. Tell us about your pathway actually with the Federation.
Well, when they made me a TPI, or approved my TPI position, I went probably within the first week out to the TPI, and I wanted to give back to the veterans as much as I possibly could. at the time, the president then, he'd been there for a fair while, ex-Navy actually, and he came down with a cancer, and probably within a year he was gone. And the public officer back then, who was Alan A. Church, I don't know whether you know Alan A. Church. Alan A. Church was our public officer at TPI. He came to me and said, we'd like you to consider being the president. And I said, well, I don't want to tread on anyone else's toes. I've been here 5 minutes, and these other guys have been around for, years. And he said, I'll talk to them about that, and which he did. And he came back and said, no, I want you to be the president. So I stepped into the role, and I've been there ever since, 22 years or thereabouts.
And so over that time, what are the transitions that you've seen where the Federation's provided to services to World War II, Korea, Malaya, Borneo, Vietnam veterans to the more modern veteran? What's that transition been like?
When I first started, the transition was probably my age group didn't partake in very much at TPI. It was mainly the World War II guys, maybe a couple of Koreans, but mostly TPI. TPI World War II guys. And it wasn't until my age group got to their age group that we started to do what they were doing. And it's mostly bus trips and social activities. But the younger guys now, when I say the younger guys, I'm talking my age group, the 65-year-olds to the 80-year-olds, we've sort of got to the stage now where we're like the World War II guys, actually. That's the way I see it. We're sort of World War II guys.
Mm. And I guess with the overlap too, I mean, you have that term contemporary, younger, modern veterans that are actually in their late 70s as well now.
That's right.
And that service is still required. But you mentioned about that transition to that special rate, so that TPI, connection will gradually fade into history. How do you see the Federation staying relevant as we move forward under this new legislation?
Well, I believe that the Federation have really got to go out and get the younger guys to come on board. And if they don't, if they sit back on their hands, we're just going to be no more. And we're finding it very difficult here in Hobart or in Tasmania to get the contemporary boys to come on board. I mean, I suppose since Afghanistan has ceased, we've probably picked up about 6, which is not very many, obviously, but at least by that 6, the word's getting around that we're here. And we get the guys who just come in off the street to us. They're not members, but they sit down with us, and we talk about our benefits and our concessions, etc. And they listen. And so it's a matter of them sort of. One of the problems with them is that they're younger guys. They've got families, and they've got jobs, and it's very difficult for them to find the time to come along and chat with us. We have one of our big functions that we have is Anzac Day. Now, Anzac Day, there's the major Federation activities that go on Anzac Day, which we know of. But we've had the North Hobart Football Club came to us, because our offices are up above the North Hobart Football Club administration, and they came to us and said, is there any way that we can have an Anzac Day a commemoration on the footy field? And I said, well, we can only ask the question. So I went up to the Anglesey Barracks and I spoke with the colonel up there in charge and told him what we wanted and what was asked of us. And he said, no way in the world will we not support you. So we went back to the footy club and we made the applications to have the day commemorated on the football field with a full catapult party, a drummer, a bugler, a vocalist, and we have a flag raising of the New Zealand and Australian ensign, and we have a vocalist who sings both the national anthems of the two countries. We have the three services represented there by the chiefs of the three services here in Tasmania. This year we're lucky that we're going to have the governor in attendance for our Anzac Day service. So we're really looking forward to that.
Is it a set game for Anzac Day, the two teams that must play?
Yes, it is. It's a set game. It's set for North Hobart and Lauderdale, and both those teams play, and we present a trophy to the winning team, and we have on that trophy we have the winning team's name along with obviously the year, and we present a Anzac medal to the player who shows the Anzac spirit, which is teamwork, sacrifice. The other two just escapes me at the moment, but yeah. So we have one of the younger veterans who is prepared to watch the game closely, and he selects who that player is to be presented with the medal, and he presents the player at the end of the game with the medal.
So Graham, as we round out this interview, is there anything else you'd like to say in relation to your service, your family life, or your life after Navy in the ASOs?
I'm very passionate that we look after the younger veteran, and I feel that we're still a long way away from actually achieving that. Even though the Department of Veterans Affairs have come along and increased their staff by 500 or whatever they said some 6 or 8 months ago, but I just think that there's a lot more we can do for the veteran, and it just needs that. It's interesting that I find that when we're in the service, we're all mates, and we're still mates when we get out, but we're sort of still apart because there's, I don't know, I think there's too many ex-service organisations, and I've mentioned that to the minister when I was in the National Board back in the mid-2000s, and we were sitting there one day and we had the minister there and we had the secretary of the Department of Veterans Affairs, and I said we've got far too many ex-service organisations, and their answer to me was, well, what do we do about it? And I said, well, you two guys should work it out that we've got too many. I said 5 organisations is all we should have, and that's the 5 main ones, which is TPI, RSL, Navy Association, Air Force Association, and the Army, or the RSL. And they said, well, we're not going to do that. And I said, well, you know, we just got too many. And
now we've got even more.
And now we've got more. That's right. And so I just believe that we can improve that. The other thing that I'd like to see in Hobart, because I think Hobart's too small to have so many ESOs, ex-service organisations, that we all should be under one roof. and we provide everything from under one roof. But there's people out there who are against that. So, you know, and I brought that up with the RSL back in 2005, 2006. And it was like trying to bump your bum on the moon. It's, you know, and I said, you know, you can still have your own autonomy. Just come into reception and down the passageway, you've got the RSL, you've got the Air Force Association, you've got the Naval Association, you've got the TPI Federation. But no.
Well, Graham, thank you very much for your time today, and I'd like to also thank Jenny, who's sitting here off to my right, and the very fact that she's kept tabs on Graham with dates and times and all that sort of thing. That's really good. Thank you very much, Graham.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks very much for that.
Right, it's a walk
Phil?
through history, and you know.